It's been over 700 days since the last MCU film was released. That is the most time there has ever been between MCU movies. And I'm not gonna lie, I miss this world. I'm a huge fan of this franchise. Obviously we've gotten TV shows since then, but there's a different feeling around an MCU movie. I do think the time away could have actually helped in some respects. Distance makes the heart grow fonder, and we were getting so much MCU stuff. To have a break after Phase 3 ended, I'm now totally pumped and ready for the enormous amount of content we're getting for Phase 4. And all that kicks off, again, kind of, with Black Widow. I'll be going non-spoilers first, and then at the end I'll talk about some spoilery stuff with a big warning. So, let's talk about it.
We have to go back to where it all started.
Where did you think I was all this time?
We have unfinished business.
So some of you may know, I was not very excited for this film. It felt like a bit of a step back in terms of the direction the MCU was moving. It didn't look all that special to me. I expected it to be a thoroughly competent, average MCU film. And I think those pretty low expectations actually helped this film, because while there are elements of that present in here, which we'll talk about, I actually like this more than I was expecting to. Cast-wise, at this point, we expect that Scarlett Johansson is going to put in a good performance as Natasha Romanoff, and she absolutely does here. This is obviously the MCU film where she has the most to do, and as she has for over a decade now, she balances the pained past with the badass spy action perfectly. I'd kind of forgotten how badass Black Widow is as a character. I feel like that can get lost in these giant scale battles where there are metal men shooting missiles and androids with lasers and wizards, but brought back down to a more grounded story, there were quite a few moments where I was like, oh yeah, this character's pretty awesome. I love some spy action as well, and this did really deliver. The action for the most part is pretty phenomenal. Winter Soldier, Civil War-esque. It's not quite on that level, but it's in that style. It's like Bourne, Craig Bond. They even have the escalator slide in there, but on superhero steroids. It's got these cool, well-choreographed fistfights, and then suddenly a supervillain in an armored car barrels through the street. It's great. There are also some pretty brutal moments for an MCU film, like we saw in Winter Soldier or the first Iron Man, and the tone of the film is also very much like Winter Soldier Civil War. There are definitely larger-than-life superhero moments, but it does bring it way down compared to Endgame or Infinity War, which I think really fit this character. Plus, we do get the Civil War enormous title cards back here. On the groundedness of the film, we get a much closer look at Natasha as a character here. Kinda like we've been getting with characters in the Disney Plus shows, and I actually really like that. I found it very interesting to see more everyday, slow moments of just Natasha being a person. It helps to flesh out her character in a more relatable way, away from all the insane Avengers stuff. The film also explores her origin, her history, and I'll be honest, I actually would have much preferred if the film leaned into the quiet, everyday life Natasha stuff, how she deals with the craziness of her life and having to go on the run and all that, rather than the origin and the family stuff so much. I get it, there's more you can build on with the origin aspect of it, more characters to bring in with a history with her and twists to make and all that, but I honestly found that stuff not as interesting as the quiet moments with Natasha, which we don't get a ton of here. Of the other characters in the film, I thought Florence Pugh did a great job as Yelena. Some of the sisterly moments felt a little forced with Natasha, but I felt generally they had really good chemistry and a believable relationship. I also thought it added an interesting dimension to Natasha's character in how Yelena views her. Like she's an Avenger, a celebrity, from the point of view of Yelena. And seeing Yelena's take on that helped in bringing Natasha's character back down to earth. Rachel Weisz was solid. David Harbour I found to be a bit of a mixed bag. I love David Harbour, and he has some good moments in the film, but his character is clearly meant as the comic relief, and I found his jokes a bit hit and miss. Like, I don't know, I guess it's the Marvel formula, but before he shows up, there are some quite funny moments that are subtle, which I think fit the tone really well, and then it sort of devolves into, we need to have a comic relief character, and it feels so transparent that that's what he's mostly there for, that it's a little distracting occasionally. It's more in your face and not as funny, and yeah, his whole bit just got a little old as the film went on in my opinion. Harbour's fine though. Overall, the comedy in the film is solid. It's the usual MCU humor. There are quite a few breaking tension with the joke moments. It's fine. Some of it made me chuckle, making fun of some of the Black Widow tropes. Nothing really made me laugh out loud, but there wasn't anything that made me cringe either. If we're going to talk villains, Taskmaster I thought was an amazing villain. Not particularly character-wise. I mean, we'll get to that more in depth in spoilers, but just action-wise, it reminded me of when we first saw the Winter Soldier. Like this really intimidating, cool-looking assassin. I love the Taskmaster suit. It's incredible. I know some people hate it because it's not like the comic. I liked it a lot. And then the fighting style of mirroring the style of the person being faced. It's only really used to its potential once, but that scene is fantastic. I feel like I'm so used to the Loki action now, which I didn't think was great, that it was a real breath of fresh air to see excellently staged and choreographed and edited action. Some more on the effects and action here. I'm glad Natasha is following the footsteps of the great Steve Rogers by falling from great heights and brutally hitting stuff on the way down, only to have not broken anything it seems. They survive so much in this movie. It's a bit comical occasionally, but hey. It's a superhero movie. I also really liked both of the costumes Natasha gets in this film. The white one especially works really well, particularly in the environments it's used in, and it's a nice change of pace in terms of color, but the somewhat changed black one is also still great. Effects-wise, this reminded me a bit of Captain Marvel, where for 98% of it, the effects are incredible and flawless, and then there's just a weird moment like this, where the green screen is hilariously awful, and a couple of bad, rubbery CGI-looking moments. But again, those are 2 instances. The film looks phenomenal otherwise. Quick reminder here that if you're enjoying this video, drop a like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on Black Widow and this review down below. Let's talk about the family stuff in this film, because that aspect of it did fall a bit flat for me. It isn't terrible or anything, it's competently executed, but I didn't feel any emotional investment in that storyline, these characters coming together, the general arc associated with that aspect of the film, which softened a lot of the emotional impact of the film overall for me. Getting more insight into Nat's character is interesting, don't get me wrong, but I think it's because you get a backstory origin of this group of people and their relationships to each other for about 10 minutes at the start, and it's a pretty fast-paced start, and then it just goes from there with trying to build an emotional arc around these characters and their relationships. And it works story-wise, just like making sense in the narrative, but I feel like that opening either didn't have enough time to properly develop or enough substance to really grip me. And all this makes the middle part of the film feel quite slow because it's trying to play off of this family aspect. It was one of those where it just felt like I was watching a movie on screen and not experiencing these moments. Because it's competent, they do make an effort to develop it somewhat, but there wasn't enough there to have me emotionally invested in those scenes, with it feeling a bit rushed and underdeveloped. One of the biggest complaints I have with this movie isn't even the movie's fault, it's more of a complaint with Marvel's planning on this film's release, because although obviously they couldn't help it being pushed back because of the pandemic, this was always going to be released after Infinity War Endgame, and while that was a bit of a confusing choice before the film came out, after actually seeing it, I find it baffling. Slotting this film in between Civil War and Infinity War, which is when it's set, would have worked so much better on so many levels. There was a bit of a constant feeling hanging over this film while you're watching it of, yeah, but she's dead. I know you can know the fate of a character and still enjoy the film, and I did enjoy this film, but when they're building up her backstory and trying to increase your investment in her as a character, it is hard to get the image of her splattered on the ground out of your head, which makes it feel a bit weird. Almost a little pointless or just too late, from the fact that we already know the culmination of her arc, and it happened quite recently. Like the film ends and you think, man, what crazy adventures is she gonna get up to next? Oh wait, on top of that, her death in Endgame would have had much more impact if we had this film first, because this film does get you more interested and invested in Natasha as a character, and it would have made her sacrifice hit even that much harder and make it even more of a shocking moment. I just can't understand the decision to put this out after those films. It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't completely ruin the movie or anything, just a bizarre choice in my opinion. So before we get to spoilers, I'll do a little conclusion here. Overall, I really missed Marvel movies, man. That could have also helped this movie a bit. It was just damn fun to be back in this world. And this ultimately was a pretty good return film after the pandemic and the break in these movies. It's a character we know, and it's not too big of a story, but it brings you back into this world cinematically, before we get more into the insane multiverse stuff. The movie isn't crazy special, it isn't the most monumental superhero film ever, there definitely are parts of that standard MCU-ness that I was expecting, but my somewhat low expectations were definitely exceeded. This was a lot of fun. It's not a totally typical origin, which I like. It develops the character while still telling an exciting story in a later period of her life. It isn't just, here's how she got her gun and her hairstyle and whatever. No, it's more than just an origin, but still does give us a deeper look at this character. It's action-packed, it's got good performances, it's entertaining throughout most of it, it definitely has its flaws, which I've talked about, but all in all, it's a quite good fun film. I'll give Black Widow a 7.9 out of 10. It could be an 8. I don't know. Maybe this coming out after Endgame moves it down to a 7.9. I know I said that wouldn't affect it, but maybe it does affect it by 0.1. But here's how my rating system works for those who don't know. Okay, and now let's get into some spoilery stuff. If you don't want stuff spoiled, click away now. 3, 2, 1, cool. Okay, first things first, just want to say, I thought the opening scene was pretty awful. That had me quite worried about the rest of the film. There was some really bad editing with a lot of sharp cuts. It felt not cheap, but sort of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.-esque, like a TV show. It was a bit too sappy and melodramatic and cheesy. Just after that scene, I was like, oh man, I am in for a rough 2 hours. And I'm happy that the rest of the movie went on to prove me wrong. Just a few miscellaneous things here that I didn't think I should talk about in the non-spoiler section. Bit of a nitpick, but would Yelena, a trained assassin, spy, agent, not know that this would cause an avalanche? I mean, I know she's meant to be a bit of a funny, goofy, spontaneous, troublemaking character, but come on. I thought Dreykov, aka Russian Harvey Weinstein, as I've written in my notes, was pretty well performed by Ray Winstone in being a horrible, gross, evil villain. I also enjoyed the final confrontation where she breaks her nose to stop the effects of his evil deodorant. It was a little cartoony and predictable how it was going. He starts monologuing his whole plan, and it's pretty obvious she's trying to bait him into hitting her. But I liked seeing her using some of her spy skills with manipulation, rather than just her physical abilities, like we saw with her and Loki in the Avengers. Then there's the Taskmaster twist, which I've seen a lot of people really hated. I'm guessing people are expecting it to be some big MCU twist, or more accurate to the comics. I am unfamiliar with the comics, but I've gathered that this is not a faithful adaptation, shall we say. I guess it's a bit similar to the Mandarin twist, though I'd guess it's not as bad for people who are upset, because at least this one isn't turned into a joke. I like that twist, and I was fine with this one. I mean, I had no connection to this character previously, so just for this movie, it works. It fit in with the theme of facing the bad things you've done in the past. It fit in with the villain's methods and plan. It wasn't incredible or anything. I didn't feel much emotion when she was freed at the end. It wasn't developed to this crazy twist, and you're floored by that whole aspect of the film. But in my opinion, it worked for this movie. It was solid. Fine. I do wish we could have had more Taskmaster just action-wise, because that initial scene was so amazing. Could Taskmaster come back in the future? Sure. I mean, anyone can come back in these, but also I'm pretty sure at the end the Widow family specifically brings her with them, so don't be surprised if we see this character in some respect in the future. Now let's talk some MCU connections in here, which to my surprise, there weren't actually that many of. I thought since it was an established MCU character and an established time period in the MCU, there were going to be tons of references, but not really. Ross is there, very briefly. We get a throwback to the thanks for your cooperation line.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Taskmaster may have fought Black Panther at some point, based on this move, or at the very least, Dreykov has shown Black Panther's fighting style to her. Also, Alexei fighting Captain America, while obviously not Steve Rogers' Captain America, I think could have been a reference to what we saw and was mentioned in Tafaz with Isaiah Bradley, where the US government made quite a few super soldiers after Cap went under, and Alexei may very well have fought one of them. Though timeline-wise, that doesn't exactly add up, but the US government probably kept on trying to make new Captain Americas for a while, so maybe we'll have even more of that 50s to 90s part of the MCU filled in future stuff. And the sort of big MCU connection, or I guess reveal, is that we finally find out what Budapest was all about. A bit darker than it initially would have seemed when it was used as a bit of a joke in the Avengers, and also we find out what Loki meant when he brought up Dreykov's daughter in the Avengers. Finally, at the end here, fittingly, let's talk about the ending and the post-credits. It ties into Infinity War with the Quinjet and the hair and all that. Sure, cool, get to hear the Avengers theme briefly, that's always nice. And then the post-credit scene, I have some mixed feelings about it, because I get that the Julia Louis-Dreyfus character is supposed to be irritating. I get that. And so her being annoying at the grave of Natasha is in character. But the movie also breaks a sad, tender moment with essentially a joke. And it felt really weird after the movie we just seen. By the end, I was actually hoping for kind of a sweet, heartfelt moment about Natasha's death after the film, since they did decide to put this out after she died. Yeah, I would have really liked just a quiet moment of Yelena and maybe the other family members at her grave, or mourning her in some way. You can still do a setup in another post-credit scene, but this just felt kind of strange. Not in a good way. The main character of the film we'd just seen that we'd been following and gotten emotionally invested in is dead. We're at her grave with someone who cared very much about her. And they do the classic undercut a serious moment with a joke thing and then go right into the setup for the next property. I know it's a fictional character, but it just felt kind of disrespectful in a way to be doing this stuff literally on the grave of Natasha in her own movie. I don't know, I feel like that definitely could have been done differently. Like have Yelena at the grave and then cut to her getting home and Julia Louis-Dreyfus is there to talk about something. On the setup itself though, we're presumably gonna get Yelena in the Hawkeye show now, after she's been misled that it's his fault that Natasha died. Maybe that'll be a pretty big element in it. I'm guessing it'll be a misunderstanding, I'm here to kill you moment, and then she realizes she's been misled, and then they team up. Sure, I like Yelena a lot in this. I like to see her in more stuff. Could add a new, interesting dynamic to the Hawkeye show. Also, I found it quite funny that they used the worst possible picture of Jeremy Renner. Like, what is this? I get that he's not going to be posing and smiling, and it was taken out of scene where he was being Ronin and vigilanteing and stuff, but he looks half asleep here. And like we saw in Tafaz, it seems like Julia Louis-Dreyfus, whose character in the comics ends up being Madame Hydra, is sort of Nick Furying this, where she's putting together a team of not necessarily villains, but I guess more morally gray people for a Dark Avengers team or something. Like we have John Walker, now Yelena, and like I mentioned in my Loki video, I think we're going to be seeing her popping up a lot putting this team together, and this will be a running plotline, ultimately culminating in some kind of battle of at least some of the Avengers and this new team. She's definitely up to something bad. Whether the people on the team follow her in that bad plan is to be seen. Again, I think Yelena is going to realize she's being manipulated. But who knows? I think this will be to the multiverse story what the Hydra stuff was to the Infinity Stone story. There's a bigger, more crazy cosmic thing going on out there that everything's building to, but along the way, this other more grounded plotline is also going on that will build to something as well. Just on a smaller scale, and probably will be more separate, though maybe it'll cross over in some way, who knows? But yeah, an interesting setup for the future. Thought it was kind of weird how the scene was done. So, those are my thoughts on Black Widow. What did you think of it? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, check out this podcast that I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, TV shows, a bunch of nonsense. It's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.